So to kick things off, we have a really interesting presentation for you guys today. We'll be hearing from the Aloha Plus Dashboard that's part of Hawai'i Green Growth, as well as from the Hawai'i Community Foundation to give that kind of dual perspective. So I will let them introduce themselves in more detail, but quickly today you'll be hearing from Laura Kam, who is the Network Manager at Hawai'i Green Growth, Kaimana Bingham, who is the Aloha Plus Dashboard and Partnerships Manager, also at Hawai'i Green Growth. And last but not least, Dana Okano, who is a Program Director for the Community Grants and Initiatives Department at the Hawai'i Community Foundation. So to kick things off, we'll hear from Laura with a little bit of history about Hawai'i Green Growth and kind of what spurred the creation of this dashboard. And you should be able to share your screen.
Okay, great to meet you, everyone. Thank you so much, Allie and Katie, for the introduction. Again, my name is Laura. I'm with Hawai'i Green Growth, and I'm just going to share a few slides about Hawai'i Green Growth and then hand it over to Dana and Kaimana to speak further about the Aloha Plus Challenge and then Hawai'i Community Foundation's work supporting SDGs in Hawaii. So by way of background, Hawai'i Green Growth is a network partnership. So we have over 150 different members from the public, private, and NGO sectors. Here's just a quick snapshot of some of our different members. And what we do is we are a convener and facilitator. So we bring the different network members together to advance action on the Aloha Plus Challenge, which is Hawaii's locally and culturally appropriate framework for the Sustainable Development Goals. And so we're the backbone organization, and we have been for the past 7 years. So our origins really started in 2011 when Hawaii hosted the APEC conference in Honolulu. And stakeholders locally decided that we can't just have another conference where it doesn't affect the place that it happens. And so stakeholders began convening to say, how can Hawaii itself be changed from APEC, and how can we get onto a green growth pathway? And so what's really great is that because we're a network-based organization, we've been able to continue the momentum forward on green growth through changing administrations. And here's just a snapshot below, as you can see, of our different elected leaders of the state who support the Aloha Plus Challenge and are really leading on it. So we have the governor, the state or the State House of Representatives, the state Senate, the judiciary, and our congressional delegation. And what's really great is that everyone agrees that we need to focus on sustainability, especially as an island economy, and is working to advance that through the Aloha Plus Challenge. And Hawai'i Green Growth is also designated as a local 2030 hub. So in 2018, the Executive Office of the Secretary General launched the Local 2030 initiative, which says that there are different hubs around the world that are really leading on SDG implementation. And these hubs can help other places to also scale SDGs and locally and culturally based implementations. So we are the only island hub, and what we do, and I'll talk a little bit about it later, is we work specifically with islands and then other US areas to scale both political commitments and then also tracking mechanisms, which Kaimana will speak on. And here is the Local 2030 Islands Network, which is a joint initiative launched by Hawai'i Green Growth and the Global Island Partnership in 2019. And that really is part of our global branch to focus on scaling with islands specifically. And here is just a picture of our Aloha Plus Challenge next to the SDGs. What's really interesting is the Aloha Plus Challenge was launched in 2014, so a year before the SDGs were launched in 2015. It's a joint leadership commitment led by the governor, 4 county mayors, and Office of Hawaiian Affairs. And it focuses on on 6 goals: clean energy, local food, green workforce and education, waste reduction, smart sustainable communities, and natural resource management. And so what we've been able to do is crosswalk the SDGs with the Aloha Plus Challenge to see how they can be aligned. What we also do is, as I spoke earlier, we convene and connect diverse partners. We bring the different partners together to identify our shared priorities, so our strategic plan for the next 3 years. We work on measuring progress on the Aloha Plus Challenge and SDGs, and then we also coordinate to drive action. Here are some pictures of the different convenings that we've done with our local stakeholders. And as I say, a community really needs to have metrics and indicators that are appropriate to them and their specific place. So we like to measure what matters. And Kaimana will speak a little bit more to this, but what we did was we led a 3-year stakeholder convening process that engaged over 500 different people. It was cross-sector. It really focused on, now that we have this Aloha Plus Challenge and these 6 commitments for 2030, how are we going to measure if we've made progress about it? Like, how will we measure that we've reached a smart, sustainable community? Or how will we measure that we've reached green workforce and education? So what we did is we had different meetings with technical experts. We convened stakeholders on the different islands of Hawaii, and we help them to identify which metrics and indicators will we use, not making perfect the enemy of the good, but what available data is there, what's the best available data. And what is interesting about this is that it is an ongoing process. And so we have the Measures and Data Working Group, which is led by Kaimana and 2 of our board chairs, or 2 of our board members. And that really focuses on where are the different data gaps, how can we be decreasing those gaps, what new data is created, what can we put on the dashboard, how can we make it more engaging to users, how can we really help it to drive behavior. We also have a policy and legislation working group, which brings together different stakeholders to figure out what policy everyone is going to be working on, or how to better coordinate across sectors. And we have a next generation working group. We also have a sustainability business forum branch, which is a special forum for our private sector partners. And we have an Alawai watershed collaboration, which is working on a concrete project based in our most critical watershed. And oops. And because of this convening, we were able to, in 2020, launch the first statewide voluntary local review. So as you might be familiar, countries release voluntary national reviews to check their, or to display their progress on the sustainable development goals. And what we did as a state is we launched the voluntary local review. So this document really shows the places that we need to be improving now that we have about 10 years left to 2030, the places that we're doing well on. And this report is really just the basis of our strategy for how we're going to advance action in the next 10 years. And now I'll hand it over to Kaimana, who will be able to walk us through our dashboard.
Thank you, Laura. I'm just going to quickly share my screen. Can everyone see the right screen? I get a little bit worried sometimes with all my monitors. Okay, great. So yeah, just for a quick introduction, my name is Kaimana Bingham, and I am the Aloha Plus Dashboard and Partnerships Manager at Hawai'i Green Growth. Just a little bit of background is I spent the last 4 years in the state of Hawaii Enterprise Technologist Services branch, where I was a stakeholder in the development of the state of Hawaii IT strategic plan and implemented the first statewide IT dashboard and roadmap for the executive branch. I was also the state's portal program manager for digital government services. So I have a little bit of a background in dashboards, and I'm so excited to be a part of Hawai'i Green Growth. I'm also delighted to have the opportunity to share Hawaii's experience with you all today. Just to echo and highlight 3 things that Laura had mentioned in her previous presentation is the need for a high-level political commitment. Second, the importance of the public-private partnerships to carry a commitment beyond political cycles. And finally, the importance of measuring progress through a dashboard that provides accountability, which is what I'm going to do a live demo of today. Again, to echo what Laura said, the Aloha Plus dashboard is a tooling mechanism driven by the Aloha Plus Challenge and provides metrics and indicators from state, county, and federal sources to reflect top economic, environmental, and social priorities. We have our voluntary local review linked at the top of our page to reference our baseline data, and the dashboard is how we are driving progress against our reporting. So here in the top left-hand corner, you can click on this, download the report if you're interested, read all about it, and it is all baseline data from the dashboard, and then the dashboard is the tooling mechanism that delivers against that baseline data, which is pretty cool to have it all, our reporting and our impact dashboard in one location. So again, as Laura mentioned, we do have 6 primary goals that we track: clean energy transformation, green workforce and education, natural resource management, local food production, solid waste reduction, and smart sustainable communities. This is also available in a scroll down option on our landing page. So you'll see each goal, and each goal has a set of primary indicators, which are these little scorecards here. And it measures how we are making progress on the respective goals. And within these indicators, there are over 200 sub-data community-driven indicators. So just to give you an overview here, in each color is one of our 6 goals. Underneath the scorecard are their corresponding primary indicators for tracking progress on their 2030 goals. You can click on these, drill down into these. These are all interactive. And then if you keep scrolling, you have our COVID response. This is our business leadership and ESG. This is the Sustainable Business Forum dashboard that Laura mentioned in her previous slides. Again, our benchmark report is linked here. And then each tile is a representative of how you get to our page for each of our goals. Oops. And then the really neat thing at the bottom is we have our Aloha Plus Challenge goals that make progress against the 17 UN SDGs. So that was the little wheel side-by-side picture that Laura showed. You can actually look at how our 6 goals contribute to all 17 of the UN SDGs. And I will just show you what that looks like, because this is all interactive. So if you click on SDG goal number 1, no poverty, it'll open up into a page, and I just pre-populated due to loading. My internet can be a little bit slow. So here is our Aloha Plus Challenge goal and how it relates to the SDG 1, no poverty. So if you open it up, it shows you which 2 goals are related to no poverty. And then it takes our primary indicator graphs and maps it back and provides a crosswalk to each target under the United Nations SDG. So it's a really neat crosswalk that we have that shows how our local impact drives global solutions and global impact. So I'll just go through, show you how each of our corresponding graphs and metadata, community-driven data, relates to the SDG that we clicked on. So that's just an example. You can click on any one of the 17 to have that crosswalk come up for whatever goal you're interested in making progress on. And then further, I just want to introduce the hyper-localized dashboards here linked at the bottom. So how we really also want to engage in our community is each island has an impact residential or small business dashboard, and I'll quickly pull that up. So you can click on either one. I clicked on Kauai just because, and so for each of our island communities, you can really get involved, you can drive impact, you can join your island community. It's almost like it is a challenge. So you can see how many households have registered, how many businesses, the top community groups, the top teams. And this is led by each of the county mayors. And these are the types of actions that our residents in our community can take to track progress. And also how we are trying to link it to the overall progress of our Aloha Plus Challenge. So that's just a quick demo of community engagement. But now we'll get back to the dashboard goals. And I think what is relevant for our panel today is smart, sustainable communities. So here we can see we're tracking progress on 8 primary target indicators, which include mobility and accessibility, tracking annual vehicle miles traveled per vehicle, affordable housing, tracking the Housing Affordability Index, economic prosperity, tracking percentage of households below the self-sufficiency standard, resilience and disaster management, which tracks social vulnerability index, land use impacts, tracking people per acre of urban land, open, public, and green spaces, which is tracking square feet of state park per capita, connection to place, is the percent of ahupua'as managed with the community-based plan. And just for everyone's awareness, ahupua'a is a Hawaiian term for large traditional socioeconomic and geologic and climate subdivision of land. And then finally, we're tracking greenhouse gas mitigation through percent reduction in carbon dioxide emissions since 2005. So you can see here, this is again, you can click into each one of these scorecards at the top. Some people miss that because they try to click on the card, but you can click on the title of each card and it'll lead you to a breakout page of metadata. Additionally, another scrolling capability of our dashboard is it has a breakout and a highlight of the graphical representation and visualizations of what we're tracking for each primary indicator. So you can do a scroll down, a high level overview of each one of our primary indicators here. And this one, this goal in particular has a lot of primary indicators. I think we have, most of them are 4 to 5 primary indicators or scorecards, but this one happens to have 6 because there's a lot to do in smart, sustainable communities. This is another way that you can drill down and just get a high level without going into each page. But the load time with my internet is a little bit funky, so we'll just scroll through that. And then lastly, again, you can see how all the primary indicators are making progress on specific SDGs. So this actually pulls out all of the SDGs that we're making progress on. You can click onto them and it can pull up other goals, but specific to this page and how we're making progress on SDGs are these 8 UN SDGs. So to give you a look of what each primary indicator looks like. So now we're in the goal, then there's a primary indicator. I'd like to share with you resilience and disaster management. So a lot of clicking, but this is the top of our resilience and disaster. This goal is measured by tracking the overall vulnerability rankings on a scale from 0 to 1, 0 being the least vulnerable, 1 being the most vulnerable of each county, measured in the Social Vulnerability Index in comparison to all US counties. The SVI takes into account socioeconomic status, household composition, disability, minority status, language, and housing type and transportation. So this page actually has a lot of really great community metadata. In 2020, we included the COVID outbreak response data. So this is pulled from our Department of Health. It's very community relevant, how we were slowing the outbreak, the action steps that Hawaii took to keep the rates down. We were one of the lowest COVID cases in the United States, I believe. We've also pulled a daily graph for the testing data in Hawaii. Again, more from our Department of Health. And then our local city and county apps and dashboards are linked here for community awareness. We also included responding with Aloha, our food resources during the pandemic as an island. Food security was a bit of an issue. So we were tracking what was available from the Hawaii Food Bank, Food Basket, State Department of Education. And this is an interactive map that users can use to drill into that. Also, volunteering during the COVID crisis. This map provided the COVID response with Aloha. The network action, we did a survey, actually Laura launched a survey for identifying shovel-ready green growth initiatives for recovery for the state of Hawaii specifically. So I think we had over 300 responses from our community for shovel-ready projects, which you can see in our COVID-19 breakout page. We have data for the public health preparedness, health insurance coverage for during COVID-19, and then additional COVID-19 resources. Further, and our more common data that we have been tracking over the years is vulnerability. So here again is disaggregated data for social vulnerability index by county. So you can see Hawaii County, Honolulu, Kauai, and Maui. Historical and continuous data on that. Additionally, sea level rise is a big concern for our community in Hawaii. So as an island state, sea level rise is a critical variable in the long-term resiliency of Hawaii communities. So this is an infographic that has potential impacts for a statewide summary for sea level rise or exposure areas, chronic flooding, and the 3.2 feet of sea level rise. So you can see here the acres of land flooded, the economic loss due to structure and land, number of residents displaced, number of structures flooded, and miles of major road flooded. And this is disaggregated by each of our islands. And then we have an estimate of our statewide totals, which would be 19 billion in loss of land and structure. So this is a very easy to read infographic for our community for awareness and to drive action. Further, we have our FEMA financial assistance for Hawaii, the financial impact of disasters. So this just shows the cost of natural disasters are currently being tracked at the national level. And this is relative to insured losses, which indicates a market failure and financial burden on public sector budgets. So this is a graphical representation of declarations in Hawaii. Impact of storms, being an island, we definitely have seen that really impact our communities over the last few years. Uninsured losses is also something that we are tracking through disaster and resilience. We have the National Flood Insurance Program community rating system, the emergency shelters and services referenced by Haima. And then finally, our Kilauea eruption. So because we are an island with an active volcano, this is something uniquely that Hawaii is uniquely positioned for. So we have the Kilauea eruption map and the historic flows and the lava flow outline for our community engagement. Further, and finally, the Learn More and Make a Difference page. These are all the resources. If we have not covered them extensively through this page, additional resources and how we can learn more with our partners. Again, and then again, our community hyper-localized dashboards are linked to the bottom of every page for further action. So with that, that's a pretty high level overview of all of our data and metadata on our dashboard, and that was just one of our goals in Smart Sustainable Communities. There's 7 more to explore, but I don't think that we have all the time for each one. But if you have any questions, please feel free feel free to reach out to me, explore the dashboard. I can drop my email in the chat and would be happy to discuss any of the other primary indicators that you all see or have questions about or interest in. So with that, I will stop sharing my screen and hand it over to Dana or Ali if there's any comments.
Well, I know if you're like me, your head is probably buzzing with questions right now. So if you need to get them down, put them in the chat and we'll get to them after we hear from Dana. We'll do a big round of Q&A. So Dana, the floor is yours.
Sorry, I lost my mute button there for a minute. Okay, thank you. Great to be here with everyone. Is everyone able to see my screen? Okay, great. Okay, so I'm sorry, it's lagging on my side. There we go. There we go. No. Sorry, I should have this figured out after how many months of Zoom, but I still have technical difficulties at times. My apologies. So yes, my name is Dana Okano. I'm a program director at Hawai'i Community Foundation. I work largely with our natural environment portfolio of programs and initiatives. So just a little bit about HCF before I talk about how we connect to the work that was just being described with the Aloha Plus dashboard. So Hawai'i Community Foundation was founded more than 100 years ago, and it's one of the large or leading philanthropic institutions in Hawaii. We are a steward of more than 1,000 funds, including more than 300 scholarship funds created by donors to transform lives and improve communities. Last year, we distributed 142 million in grants and contracts statewide, including over 9 million in scholarships. And we also serve as a resource on community issues and trends in the nonprofit sector. One of those areas is that we coordinate is what we call the Environmental Funders Group, or EFG, which is a peer learning exchange of approximately, right now we have about 12 members, and all of these members do environmental giving in Hawaii, but they're made up of funders who are both based in Hawaii, but also based nationally. EFG members recognize that part of the management challenge in Hawaii was a lack of sufficient tracking of movement in the sector. As one member said, I think very eloquently, how do you know if you're winning if no one is keeping score? And so in 2015, they collectively as a group decided to pool their dollars and partnered with Hawai'i Green Growth to provide funding support for the Aloha Plus dashboard to see to help with the tracking. This also came in preparation for what was at the time to be the upcoming 2016 IUCN World Conservation Congress, which was held in Honolulu. And so the idea was also to ramp up our commitment as funders to the efforts of conservation in Hawaii. And so for those first few years, the environmental funders group were kind of the core funding support for the Aloha Plus dashboard, funding up to 90% of the development of the dashboard. And all of the EFG members still agree with that need, though we are slowly starting to roll back the percent of our support as Hawai'i Green Growth is able to expand and bring in other funding support for the work. So kind of at the same time that this work was going on in the development of the Aloha Plus dashboard, internally, Hawai'i Community Foundation also began a journey, and this was probably in about 2018, um, to look at reframing how we look at our work internally as a community foundation. And so in 2019, they officially adopted the change framework as a guide. And so each letter of change represents a sector or area that affects our community and its ability to thrive. And so change stands for community and economy, health and wellness, arts and culture, natural environment, government and civic engagement, and education. And each sector has a subsector with relevant trackable data known as indicators. And in total, there are 19 subsectors and 36 indicators. The change framework is a curated set of statewide data that begins to identify the gaps where help in our community is needed and opportunities where help will do the most good. Um, and so the idea is to co-create shared goals and consistently and reliably track the progress of our collective efforts over time. So the curated data helps to understand the interconnected nature of the sectors and how they affect one another, really examining the root causes and to create effective solutions. So all of these are listed at the web address at the bottom of the page, and of course we can share that later. So when HCF was going through the change process, they did also look across at the SDGs, and they did find there were many areas of alignment, as you can see here, if they kind of took the different SDGs and plugged them into the different letters of the change category. Ultimately, though, HCF did not adopt the SDGs officially, because ultimately I think they found that while some of the metrics were really a direct match, many others were not quite the right fit for Hawaii, or they felt the need to really drill down more specifically than the SDG allowed for in the areas of concern. So for example, SDG 11 is sustainable cities and communities, which aligns well with our C sector on community and economy. However, what Hawai'i Community Foundation identified as specific needs and where we are tracking our data is really around things like affordable housing and diversified economy away from our primary economy, which is tourism. And that became much more evident during COVID. We did have really serious economic downturn when we lost tourism due to COVID. So I guess just in closing, you know, while Hawai'i Community Foundation didn't adopt the SDGs outright, there are clearly close alignments in the types of things we're tracking. And through our participation with the Hawaii Environmental Funders Group, we do continue to support Hawai'i Green Growth and their work on the Aloha Plus dashboard, which Kaimana did an excellent job of explaining how that dashboard does align very well with the SDGs. So I will stop there and we can turn it over to questions.
Great. Thank you all for your presentations.